This is the story of Altis in 1974. The communist takeover, the resulting naval battles between NATO and Warsaw Pact forces, and its eventual recapture by the British. The islands that would become the Republic of Altis and Stratis have known conflict from the early 20th century until modern times. Historians of Altis and Stratis tend to focus on events on land. But locals know they live on islands. They are surrounded and their lives are dominated by thalassa, the sea. And they know that control of the islands inevitably falls to those who exercise thalassocratia, sea power. A complaint by NATO triggers a fact-finding mission to Altis by Warsaw Pact diplomats. The next morning, 16 August 1974, at Northwood headquarters and at Whitehall in London, Miller's report on the Kavala incident, as it immediately becomes known, causes consternation. Whitehall is already planning to summon the Soviet ambassador later that morning to protest the flagrant breach of the blockade. Quarantine. An additional line is hastily added to the talking points put in front of the Permanent Secretary of the Foreign and Commonwealth Office for the meeting. The line reads, "And British subjects have reportedly been killed by personnel wearing Soviet uniform." The line is carefully written, calibrated by a junior diplomat to be accurate to Miller's report, but noting that report is uncorroborated by any other source, and so it could be wrong, and may need to be walked back. The victims of the massacre would be comforted to know they had only reportedly been killed, and then only by a person wearing Soviet uniform. Later that day, a senior Kremlin official almost smiles, except that he never smiles. If he had, he would be grinning from ear to ear at reading the Soviet ambassador's report. Instead, he merely grunts. The British are so predictable, he thinks. Their diplomatic protest, for all its careful words, has just fallen into the trap carefully laid by the Soviets. He looks around the room. Simple, bare, no photographs, no maps or plans, no ornaments, giving nothing away. He flicks an unseen switch to a hidden intercom. "Da, General." The intercom is answered on the other end by his military assistant. "Send the diplomatic mission, the one to Altis we discussed. Tell them to investigate the British allegations, and tell our man on Altis to make the necessary arrangements." And so, the next day, 17 August 1974, a small delegation of 3 diplomats, handpicked from Warsaw Pact countries, meets at an airport outside Moscow. They pile into a transport aircraft from a Czech airline, bound for the little island of Altis in the northern Aegean. One diplomat from East Germany, one diplomat from Czechoslovakia, and one diplomat from Estonia. All true believers, and all looking forward to their free holiday. They have read the report from the Soviet embassy in London about the British government's absurd allegations, full of the usual capitalist lies: blockade runners, massacres, Soviet military intervention. They look out the windows at Pyrgos Gulf. No Soviet ships. Their instructions are simple. Go to Altis, see the truth, tell the world. In a moment, as they disembark the aircraft, they will catch sight of a distinctive Soviet trijet aircraft through a gap in a hangar door. They will be told that it experienced engine trouble from faulty aviation gas supplied at a Western airport, and that another similar aircraft is bringing Soviet engineers to fix the engine. And another with fresh Soviet fuel. Altis International Airport. At the terminal building, the three diplomats are met by a man in an ill-fitting suit. They assume he is with the Soviet Diplomatic Mission to Altis. The diplomats do not know he is in fact a military officer. The man introduces himself, in Russian of course. "Please, call me Sergei," he says. "Sergei Lukin." All diplomats look the same to Lukin. Grey men, in grey suits, with grey hair and grey hats.
Второй, жду. Третий, жду. Четвертый, жду.
Lukin leads them to a waiting jeep. Unmarked, of course. The diplomats get into the jeep. Enjoying the sunshine and fresh air of Altis. Lukin drives carefully past the KKAS enforcers. He nods at them as he passes. He does not trust these comrades. Reaching the open road, he speeds up. He has a careful itinerary planned. And a big day ahead. First, they go to Kavala port and meet a local man claiming to be a fisher, who tells them that the fishers cannot leave port due to the oppressive blockade by capitalist naval ships of the British imperialists, their former colonial overlords. Why are we being punished, merely for wanting freedom? In response to a question from one of the diplomats, he looks confused and denies any knowledge of a massacre. The KKAS have liberated us, the man says. The only massacre, he says, is my profit from not being able to fish. He quickly corrects himself. I mean, contribute to the proletariat. Lukin groans inwardly, but his face remains impassive. If the diplomats look closely, which they do not, they might wonder whether the local really has the weathered face of a fisher, tanned and lined from hours under an Aegean sun. Or whether his hands have really handled nets and lines for a living. Or, where are the fishing boats that cannot leave port? Lucan then takes the coast road north, for the scenic ocean view mostly. But also to avoid the regime's prison camp at the former stadium. For the growing number of political prisoners of the new regime. Outside the camp, the mass graves are already starting to fill. Then, Lucan drives them up into the mountains. To the castle at Orio Castro, the KKAS stronghold in the communist heartland. For lunch with the mysterious figure who commands the local communist movement. The lunch will feature olives, bread, and a local stew that tastes of goat, or perhaps rabbit. And a little too much of the famous local Altian wine. The KKAS leader is charismatic and will charm the diplomats with his easy laughter and his big moustache reminiscent of Stalin. If the diplomats look closely, which they do not, they may ask themselves why a man of the people remains holed up in a remote castle surrounded by heavily armed guards. After a long lunch, Lucan drives the diplomats through winding roads, through hills and forests, through Ceuta and Arthura, to the airport. The combination of an early start in Moscow and a little too much Altian wine for lunch causes them to sleep for much of the trip. If the diplomats look closely, which they do not, they might wonder at the lack of military forces along their route. Mere weeks after a revolution, with NATO staring them down. But the route is carefully selected to avoid any Soviet or KKAS military presence. Everything looks peaceful. Instead, the diplomats will truthfully report that they did not see any evidence of a Soviet military presence on Altis. One of them sleepily asks Lucan about reports of visits by Soviet ships. "Ah yes," Lucan responds. "Just a routine stopover between Tartus and the Black Sea. Dropping off modern Soviet tractors for the local farmers." The diplomats all nod wisely at the blatant lie. None of them ask why Soviet tractors would be coming from Tartus. They have enjoyed their fact-finding mission. The sunshine, the fresh air, the long lunch with an Aegean comrade, and the scenic drive through the mountains and plains of a peaceful country. Yes, they are ready to tell the world the truth about Altis. Meanwhile, on an undisclosed island in the Aegean, 3 landing craft of unknown origin have deposited a number of men and supplies. The exiles from the Altis Brigade are reuniting. An unknown donor has made good their deficiencies in uniform and equipment, supplying fresh weapons and ammunition from a secret World War II era stockpile. The exiles were brought together at Athens and taken by cargo ship to the island, where the old landing ships ferried them ashore, and where they have set up a rudimentary camp. The Altis Brigade has begun training. In the next episode, a provocative Soviet gift challenges Turkish control of the Dardanelles Strait. Thanks for watching. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and donate. And stay tuned for the next episode.